Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is June 1st. My gosh, we're getting into the middle of the year, 2021. It's 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, and it's time for the Professor Hamamoto show. We have as you've noted, a small group, but that's fine because I'm workshopping and refining this program and a series of other programs that are related. So we'll start small, and before you know it, we'll be up to 500,000 to 750,000 viewers per episode. Perhaps I'll even be going daily. But the reason I mention this is because thank you very much for supporting me at the early stage. And you're the core group that is going to rise with me to the very top because the material that I'm covering here, no one else is doing it, and no one else has a unique approach that I can boast here, which I'll talk to you about in a moment. And it's a technique that I want to share. It's a teaching and a learning technique, a research technique that I think it's ultimately useful to everybody who wants to adopt it. And it has wide application. It'll help you at work. It'll help you in your relationships. There's no warranty to it, but I'll tell you that if you look at certain problems in the culture society in a certain way, and I call this technique cultural forensics. Write that down, cultural forensics. And I've started a new YouTube channel called Cultural Forensics. I was going to put this talk on there, but I didn't want to have you search around for this particular presentation because it's one that you'll want to see live and one that you'll want to share and one that possibly can gain quite a bit of traction. And it's about a certain type of sexual culture that has evolved in Orange County, California. So let me get to it. I'm applying my registered, and I've registered the name, as well as set up the YouTube channel, and hopefully it'll be syndicated at some point. But I've adopted this concept of cultural forensics, using this method to unpack the inner layers, right? The inner meaning of the politics, the culture, the society of people's lives, of their relationships. And I'll tell you why I'm doing this. I read a lot of true crime. I have been doing it, as all of you know here, for decades now. And all these true crime books stop short of really digging in to ask the number one question that's on my mind and your mind, and that is the why question. They'll give you the who, what, where, and whatever, the facts, the information, and they'll take you through, and I'm grateful, I'm not complaining about this, they'll take you through elaborate court proceedings. They'll put court transcripts in there. And that's very, very useful, right? But these books do not uniformly, they rarely, I can't really even think of one offhand, that really get into the nitty gritty of why people behave in such a way. And we're talking about, when true crime, we're talking about deviant and aberrant behavior by definition, crime, right? Criminality. But the insights that I offer, like I say, are far more practical in the ordinary, mundane reality that you and I live with supposedly, seemingly ordinary, mundane individuals who might not be as ordinary as you might believe. And that certainly holds true in the case of one Dr. Grant Robicheaux, medical doctor, who I'll get to in a moment. And of course, we have to include his girlfriend. I'll use that term. That's how it's written up in the papers and the articles. Amongst my professional colleagues, they like to use the term partner. And I like girlfriend better. It has the emotional and the romantic connotation to it, whereas a partner is a business relationship. And that's exactly why they use that term, because they want to take all the intrigue out of one of the most intimate relationships a human being can have with another person, besides the relationship you enjoy with your mother and father, or your parents, or your grandparents, perhaps. It's an intimate relationship. So that's part of the mind game that they play in the academic world, which we'll be talking about today in a moment, because they don't realize, the people at the University of California, Irvine, don't really realize this intrigue, this swamp of intrigue that surrounds them, that really they're the centerpiece of it. I'll get to that in a moment. They're the centerpiece of it. And I have a lot to say about University of California, Irvine, because I went to grad school there. I went to, my doctoral studies were at UC Irvine. My master's was at, as many of you know, at Bowling Green State University in Ohio, Northern Ohio. So we have here Grant Robicheaux, and we have Cerissa Riley, his girlfriend. And they represent another example of male-female partner crime, for lack of a better designation. Let's call it partner crime, male-female. So far, I haven't come across any team killers or partner crimes between two women, let's say lesbian lovers, or homosexual lovers, male-male. But I'm sure that this type of partnership, criminal partnership, sexual criminal partnership, runs the gamut, right? And I'll be very much interested in reading a book like that, should a case arise. And you can almost bet that if there are human beings out there in certain configurations, they're going to commit a crime at some point, and we're going to read about it. So this is male-female partner crime. Some of you remember the talk I gave on Philip Garrido, and his wife, Nancy Garrido. He's the guy that lived in the South Bay of California. That is south of Oakland, south of Berkeley, across the bay from San Francisco. Excuse me. And they're the couple that abducted she was a girl at the time. By the time she was released, I think, well, she was still a teenager, but she's an adult now, and I believe she's a parent herself. But that's J.C. Dugard, D-U-G-A-R-D. You might remember that kid. I'm not going to go through it again because I gave a complete talk on it. I'm just saying that these male-female partner crimes seem to bear certain similarities. And I'm benefiting from studying Garrido and Nancy Garrido closely in trying to apply these insights to the case of Grant Robicheaux and Cerissa Riley. I recalled a even more recent example, and this has already gone through the trial process. There's already been convictions assessed here. And I'm talking about the NXIVM case, right? Remember Keith Rainier, the self-proclaimed genius level organizer of his own little universe. Let's call it a cult for the sake of convenience. And the example is in the person of Allison Mack, the actress Allison Mack, who used to be on the Superman show, or Young Superman. I don't know. I didn't watch the show, but a couple of times I might have seen it by accident. Didn't know who Allison Mack was. But there's a connection here with Allison Mack to this specific story about Grant Robicheaux and Cerissa Riley. When I say Robicheaux, implied is Riley as well, just so I don't keep being redundant here. I'll just shorten it to Robicheaux, or the doctor, okay? Allison Mack is also from Orange County. She's from Orange County, and I read that the court, she's been through the court system, unlike Robicheaux and Riley. They still haven't been tried yet, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So this is in process. We're doing this in real time. This is my spot analysis of where I think this case comes from, how it originates, and where it possibly might go. And of course, with my insights drawn from what I call the technique of cultural forensics, I'm going to be able to delve much deeper than a trial would, or a true crime book, because like I say, true crime only deals with it within a certain compartment. And that's maybe one of the reasons why true crime is promoted by the publishing industry, and people in law enforcement and intelligence really don't mind it. They get to figure out how the public is going to receive a certain type of crime. And these could be crimes that they themselves might have instigated and might be part of. I'm thinking that perhaps there might be intelligence behind this current case involving Dr. Grant Robicheaux and Cerissa Riley, but I'm getting ahead of myself, right? Just as we are, at least me and other people, we tend to suspect that there were security and intelligence people or forces or agencies behind the NXIVM cult. This often happens. And I gave a talk early on drawn from this example of the so-called Manson family, right? That book, Chaos, Operation Chaos. And we see now that the Manson family, as horrible as they are, but all that was put out there in order to obscure, to occult, to hide the fact that it was part of a intelligence psyop, the so-called Manson family. So you see how these patterns recur, and I'm thinking that perhaps this particular scenario is going to follow that pattern. That's for us to figure out together as this case unfolds. Now, Allison Mack is an Orange County girl, sort of like me. I wasn't born in Orange County. I don't know if she was, but she grew up here in Orange County. And the judge said, or the court said, hey, you can stay at your parents' home in Orange County, Los Alamitos specifically, while the penalty phase is being sorted out. Now, maybe I'm reading an old article. Maybe she's in prison now, or maybe she's on probation. I don't know. I haven't followed. That's not the point. The point is that she was remanded to custody outside of the prison system to her parents, which is kind of unusual given the nature of her crimes. And that really stuck out at me. But it might not be so unusual when you consider that Los Alamitos, California was also the home of Earl Woods, Mr. Earl Woods. Do you remember who he is? Yes, he's the father, deceased father of Eldrick Tiger Woods. And it was in Los Alamitos military base. I think it was an Air Force base, Army Air Force in the old days. Before there was an Air Force, there was an Army Air Force during World War II. And I think the Los Alamitos facility itself was built in 1942, right soon after the war started. And I think it's become part of it has been deeded to the public, let's say the golf course part of it, where Tiger Woods got his early training as a super soldier, as some say, on that very golf course through his father, who was a specialist in the area. He himself was, as you probably know, was a special forces member in Vietnam. Assassination, psyop, espionage, sabotage, all that good stuff that was run under, I don't know specifically if you were working under Phoenix, but I'm just saying generically Phoenix-like programs that you most likely know about that were overseen by William Colby, former OSS, CIA, and all that. So you can see the continuity there. So maybe Allison Mack has a very similar relationship to Los Alamitos Naval Station or Air Station. By the way, I taught on that base a couple of times when I was working for a in-service, this is before I got on at the University of California. And this is after I got my degree at University of California, Irvine. I had a hard time breaking it. And so I had to work at these places. But it turns out that it was useful background information because I got onto these military bases and I was teaching primarily enlisted men, non-officers who were working on their university degrees while they were in the service, and the military paid for it. So I got to know them and their world a little bit, and they got to see the world through my eyes, that of a social scientist who was developing what has now turned out to be the cultural forensics technique or methodology. So keep that in mind. Earl Woods, Los Alamitos, Allison Mack, because we're going to see that Orange County, contrary to what many of us think, or many people who are not from Orange County are familiar with it. You don't realize it's a highly militarized space. It's a highly militarized geopolitical space. And you've been taken away from this because you've watched all these so-called reality shows that give a completely different look at the Orange County that I grew up in. Starting, I think I moved in my family, my folks moved us to Orange County when I was in 5th grade. So how old are you? Like 10 years old or something? Prior to that, I was living in LA. Orange County, when I first moved there, this is in 1963, because I remember in 5th grade, our beloved martyred president, John F. Kennedy, was murdered, was assassinated live in front of everybody in this ritualistic fashion to traumatize the public and to send a message out to people who are not wanting to go along with what today we know as the deep state, saying, well, hey, listen, we can get to the president. You know, you're very easy to get to. All right. That's how you might enter. I wasn't looking at it this way as a 10-year-old, but my Orange County was one of orange groves. It was one of a lot of undeveloped property, which is now highly developed, thanks to one person who's a key personality in the development of modern contemporary Orange County. And also he's a key figure in the development of the University of California, Irvine. In fact, he has an events center where they play basketball. It's a multi-purpose center. It's huge. They have concerts, which I've been to, music concerts. I even saw the Dalai Lama once at this center. It's called the Bren Center, B-R-E-N, Donald Bren, who, by the way, is the wealthiest landowner in the United States of America. Maybe Bill Gates is jealous, so he's buying up property, but it's Donald Bren. You don't hear that name very often, but he's a very important and powerful figure in the world, not just of real estate. If you're talking about real estate, you're also talking about deep state. And he might even exert more power behind the scenes than Donald Trump, who we see as a real estate mogul himself, right? He's the one that's up front. He's the exoteric version. The esoteric is Donald Bren behind the scenes. So that's the Orange County. I won't go too deeply into it. I was planning to dig a little bit deeper into my own background, but it's not really necessary. Maybe I'll wax nostalgic at another time because there's just too much material to cover here. By the way, this Tiger Woods story that I told you about the Los Alamitos, it's not apocryphal. It says in its own promotional material, its own biography, runway, they even give the number of the runway 22L. That was where the planes would come in. It's been turned into a Navy golf course, and it says this is where Tiger Woods honed his game as a youth. It's the 18-hole destroyer course, opened in 1966. Executive 9 holes were later added, and it's been open to the public since 2000. Before, it was only military. And by the way, I found out through my military contacts that the U.S. military has the best golf courses. It manages the best golf courses, not just within the U.S., but also all over the world. And that's one of the perks that people in the Air Force get in particular, or officers in Japan, Okinawa. And I found this out at the Sequoia Country Club, which is in the Oakland Hills, not far, by the way, where Elizabeth Short is buried, courtesy of Dr. George Hodel or whoever is paying for that mausoleum where she is. Supposedly he had a telescope where he can look over the Oakland Bay, or the San Francisco Bay, from his 38th story penthouse in San Francisco, and can see the crypt where he has her buried. Anyway, I was up there at the Sequoia Golf Course, and this is where I really, I think I was being kind of not read in, but they were kind of testing me out to see if I was of their ilk, if I could be trusted. So I had a nice lunch there And it was one of those moments where you wonder, what am I doing here? And when you have that feeling, that means something's weird, something's off. And I listened to my instincts, and I'm certainly glad I did. I'll tell you a little bit later about the Sequoia Golf Course at some other point, but they have a meaning far beyond what you see on television with the tournaments. And also, it was at the Los Alamos Army Airfield where Air Force One landed, and it disgorged its precious cargo named President Barack Obama. This is back in 2014. And they drove him out to the commencement speech at, guess where? UC Irvine. President Barack Obama, who has, of course, Southern California roots, especially Los Angeles, right? You know about Occidental College. That's where they kind of kept him in a holding pattern before they sent him off to Columbia and inserted him into the presidency of the United States. So he has these roots. So they flew him out here in Air Force One. He didn't land at John Wayne Airport. He didn't land at LAX. He landed at this military airfield and then drove him out to Irvine, which, given the traffic, it might take an hour, but it's probably no more than 10 or 15 miles away. So, oh, by the way, before I go on, I want to remind, most of you know this, that the people who are watching here, you're Patreon members, and I encourage all who are not watching to sign up for the Patreon. It's $5 a month. And if you signed up before I send the invitation out later this evening, you'll get to attend tomorrow's office hours. And by that, I mean an hour and a half, 90 minutes. It's going to be tomorrow, June 2nd. Again, I'll send the invitation to the people who are signed up. It's, you're going to get it. And just click it on. You know the process. It's going to be through Zoom. It's going to be tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, we can talk about these cases as well as whatever that you have uncovered and want to speak about. It's kind of an open forum format that I will be moderating. So that's tomorrow. And by the way, I don't just send, I don't know what you'd call just forwarding articles, right? That doesn't interest me. And I don't really read a lot of forwarded articles myself because I'm up on the news. I don't know everything, but I get a lot of repetition. So I make a conscious effort on my Patreon to put material up there that you will not find anywhere else, most likely. Or if it is, it's something that I bring my own particular insights on. So you're going to find some good articles, a lot of academic articles that underscore and validate and verify some of the assertions that I make in my talks and that other people have been making. Audios, for example, there was one YouTube that was taken down last week or a week and a half ago, and I was able to take the audio of it and post it on Patreon, and it was still there, so you could listen to it. So that was a good use of Patreon so far as that's concerned. So you get that, and I will also ask you, this is the last announcement of today. So I have 2 YouTube channels that I started to rename, and I'm going to start posting to them. I'm going to be widening out my base. I'm going to be building out these sites in anticipation of syndicating these shows, these programs, with a goal of hitting 500,000 to 750,000 viewers for every show, as I mentioned. And that channel, in addition to Professor Hamamoto, which is being censored currently, I have 2 strikes, so there's a good chance it might go away. So please subscribe to Cultural Forensics. Yes, I have a channel, Cultural Forensics. It's not going to be just crime. It's going to be about culture in general, music, sports. Saw a great documentary on Jose Canseco. It was an interview, not a documentary. Sports figures like that, right? He talks a little bit about juicing, they call it, or taking steroids, human growth hormones, performance-enhancing drugs. And I have a whole talk. That's why I watched it. I have a whole talk that I'm working on supposed they call PEDs, PEDs, performance-enhancing drugs, which were workshopped in the Oakland area with a company called Balco, BALCO. but that's another. So that's going to be cultural forensics. And also I have collegiate Gothic up there. Please subscribe to it. I think they have only a couple subscribers at this point, but I want to populate that so far as subscribers are concerned. So I can take you, the subscriber, over to iTunes or a web-based platform and leave BoobTube behind, right? YouTube. Okay, that's the announcement. Now let me talk about the Robicheaux bloodline, right? Or bloodlines, because there's a confluence of bloodlines here. And again, I'm not going to belabor the points that have been made in other sources that you can easily read about, right? You can find out, for example, in biographical information. You don't need any specialized research skills or cultural forensics. And remember, research is not YouTubing. Research begins at YouTubing. Research begins with Googling or search engineering. That's not an end in itself. These are tools. I'm reminding you that is kind of a cul-de-sac that's been set up for us to lead you to believe that you found everything you need to know and understand about ordinary reality and also bizarro world reality, such as that inhabited by Dr. Robicheaux and his girlfriend. But you'll know that, just quickly, that he attended medical school. He does have a medical degree. He looks like a movie star. He's a handsome guy, and I think he was a university, probably Division I athlete. I don't know what his sport was. He went to LSU. That's a Division I school. Shaquille O'Neal played basketball there famously, as well as some other people. But the story goes, and I don't know if it's true or not, is he blew his arm out or something. And that's what got him into orthopedic surgery. And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he was able to pass the MCATs and was a stellar performer academically. There's a certain type of person they allow in medical school so that they'll follow orders, right? Those are the ones that you and I know. But there's another stream of people they let into medical schools who will do crazy ass type of stuff on the behalf of the medical establishment. They're sort of like pass-throughs or hangouts or whatever, but they'll do about anything, ranging from developing cancer viruses through monkeys and animals, or in the case of Dr. Hodel, doing experimental surgeries, reproductive surgery, and making look like they're mutilations, but they're just sort of experimental processes. These are examples that go on and on. Most of you know about Dr. Mary Sherman and know about the Judith Very Baker story, so I don't have to belabor that point. So there's a stream of people that go into Ph.D. programs and medical school that are put on that track, right? And he did after graduating his degree at LSU, he did his medical residency at UC Irvine. That's why I mentioned UC Irvine at the top. Donald Bren, that connection, and the Orange County connection, because there's a unique culture of Orange County that is similar to, but different and distinct from, its neighbor to the north, which is Los Angeles. In fact, Los Angeles and Orange County used to be the same. It used to be just one giant Los Angeles County. Then I don't know the process, but it was divided, and you got Orange County went this way, and LA County went the other way. And that's the LA that we think we know through, because it's much diverse than you might think. That's the LA that we know through the movies and Hollywood and all the popular culture, and through Joan Rivers and Melissa Rivers interviewing celebrities on the red carpet. All that hoopla, right? So Orange County is seemed when I was growing up, we lived under sort of a sense of being inferior to Los Angeles culturally. There's nothing going on here, because whenever I had to go to music with my friends in the early days, at least, we had to drive to LA. At least I did. And in early days, when I wanted to see foreign films, I had to drive to LA to the university or to Santa Monica, West LA, because they didn't have them in Orange County until the Wilshire Theater showed up late. And the Balboa Theater also had a revival house as well. So we lived in that sense. So this is back in the 60s, of course, and then it became the Orange County that we know today, and that's primarily courtesy of these shows on the Bravo channel, right, on cable. And I never used to watch Bravo. I never used to watch the Food Network. Who knew that the Food Network would give rise to this phenomenon called Anthony Bourdain, or as I call him, Tony Bo, because I went in on him like last week, and we know a lot more about Tony Bo and his family, do we not? Without me returning to our friend there, so. Yeah, Orange County orthopedic surgery. There's some Dr. George Hodelian type of residences, because I was just, I was reading that, as you know, so it's still fresh in my mind. And by the way, I didn't find out about, I'm behind the curve here. I didn't find about the Dr. Robicheaux case until getting prepared for another Newport Beach case, I'll Take Care of You, which I'll have to do at some other time. But I just wanted to get to this while it was hot and fresh in my mind. And this is germane as well. It's relevant because it takes place in Newport Beach, and it's a similar type of crime to what we saw in the case of Robicheaux. It involves sex seduction, plastic women, with cosmetic surgery. It's the Real Housewives of Orange County. And I was mentioning Bravo. The Real Housewives of Orange County is a Bravo channel show. And Dr. Robicheaux, Dr. Grant Robicheaux himself was on a Bravo channel, quote unquote, reality show. And what was that called? The Real Bachelor Online Dating. I can't remember the title of it. I'll come to it in my notes at some point. But you get the point. Bravo. So, hey, maybe Bravo is involved as a channel, just like the Food Network, just like PBS, just like CBS. Maybe Bravo, it's like CNN, of course, we all know about that. Maybe Bravo channel itself has these intelligence connections. And maybe these reality shows are ritualistic introductions to certain characters who are going to be cast in certain roles into the future, right? Whether it be Dr. Robicheaux or someone like Rodney Alcala, right? Rodney James Alcala, who I'll mention in a moment. This is one of the original insights you're getting from me through the cultural forensics perspective, and that is game shows, cable shows, and before that, television network, syndicated television shows, as MK Ultra type grooming and preparatory, also revelation of the method, mechanisms for future crime, right? They're prepping us right there. Game shows. I mean, what could be more banal and even insipid than a game show? Wrong. As it turns out, I think there are a lot more than that. And I will attempt to begin, because I'm only just starting here. I'm on a new string here, and you're going to come with me, and you're going to even contribute more than I'll ever know about the game show as psyop thread that the cultural forensics will take us into. I'll get to that in a moment. Be patient with me. I have so much material here. I'm just going all over the map. Okay. Keep in mind, game show. So now I alluded to the bloodlines of Dr. Robicheaux, and as you know, bloodlines is fundamental to the cultural forensics perspective. Just like to a criminal criminalistics person, they look at blood, they look at blood spatter, they look at DNA, they look at blood type, and DNA has become the tool. I don't know, I'm kind of hesitant to validate that point. I'm reserving judgment. We saw in the case of the murder of O.J. Simpson, not the murder of O.J., but the murder case involving O.J. Simpson, that even so-called blood evidence can be questionable without going into it, right? So bloodlines is intrinsic, is fundamental to this perspective. It's more than a perspective; it's a methodology that I developed called cultural forensics. And I suspect, and this is for you, Tyrone. I see you're in the chat there, and you're from Louisiana. Tell me about the is the Robicheaux name big in not just in New Orleans or maybe central Louisiana? Is there some kingpins or kingfishes or famous old time, pre-republic, like Revolutionary War type? I mean, even further back when Louisiana was run by the French monarchy, right? But anyway, the point is that I think Robicheaux is from an old established family of French descent. His name obviously is of French derivation, but we got to get to the specifics. We want to find out who his mother, father, grandparents, great grandparents, who I don't know yet. You'll have to find this out, but most likely came in when what today is Louisiana was run by the French crown, right, under King Louis XIV, right? And Louis XIV is the embodiment of absolutism, monarchical absolutism, and there's revolutions that were put into play to throw out the monarchs and to throw out all the oligarchs, whether they be a monarch or the Catholic Church. We're talking about France here now. And now they have another oligarchy. It's the NATO oligarchy, and it's run by Emmanuel Macron, right? It's the Rothschild oligarchy. It's Robert Michel, who's also French by nationality, calls the iron law of oligarchy. You got your monarchs, you got your church. It could be Catholic, it could be Protestant, it could be a Buddhist theocracy, whatever. It's an oligarchy, and we have a banking oligarchy in place. And Michel says that's just how societies work, and a lot of history is made by overcoming one oligarchy to replace the previous one. We're also in a biomed oligarchy, and we're struggling against it right now. We're in a revolutionary situation right now, in case you haven't fully realized it, and the stakes are very high. So without going to the background, the historical background of Louisiana, I'll leave that to you. Just suffice to state that you can see traces of that in the French origins of that in the Louisiana state flag of today. It's the fleur de lis, right? It's that flower that it's in triplicate on the state flag. And by the way, before I do that, let me just give you some occultic information, because that's part of the cultural forensics methodology, right? And I got this from a site. It's called Sacred Texts. I'll give you the link on my Patreon. That's what I like to use the Patreon for. I can't get through it here, and if you want to read it on your own, which I encourage, and you can do it for your own research, I can put that material in there. You can run with it, which I know you will. Most of you have already taken the Bourdain story further than I have. But I'm on to Robicheaux now, right? And I'll come back to Tony Bow and those other people. I just want to get it set in motion at first. So this, according to this entry here, the fleur de lis is a Lucifera, Lysis, Lucis, Lucis, B. It's related to the Egyptian scarab. It's a sign, a symbol of immortality, which they felt that their royalty had. And the Egyptian thread is not just symbolic, as it turns out to be. There's a bloodline there that goes all the way through modern France and might have migrated across the Atlantic Ocean into what to now is to Louisiana, and then in the form of a Dr. Grant Robicheaux wound up in Orange County. Why do I pronounce it Orange County? I give it the pseudo-French pronunciation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, to answer my own question, in prepping for this course, I said, oh my gosh, talk about kismet, talk about just happenstance, but I don't think it is happenstance. I think it was meant to be. I happened to be reading 2 new books simultaneously by an author that's new to me, who I want you to check out if you're so inclined. His name's Ralph Ellis. He has a couple of talks, a few talks on YouTube. I found them very difficult to follow because he goes really, really fine grain in the talks, which talks are not really meant to be. They're meant to kind of lead you into more general areas of discussion that will in turn get you to read the books, which is where you can really, really dig in. So I've been looking at his books. That's where I started. In other words, looking at the top, the story through the Dan Brown fables, right? Da Vinci Code, and then some of you seen the YouTube stuff, by Robert Seifer or whoever else who plagiarizes this material and puts it on YouTube to get people to think, oh yeah, now I know everything I need to know about the all the heresies down in southern France, or they read Dan Brown and think that they're experts on the esoteric traditions of the Gnostic Gospels and whatnot. I mean, I don't claim expertise for that, but a lot of people, according to my comments, they take delight in telling me all the stuff I need to read and educate myself about. And I think, oh my God, these people are at a very, very fundamental level, and they think they know it. So Ellis is a good start. I don't know what his training is. I'm gonna have to find that out. Not that that matters, but there's a lot of really decent scholarship that he draws from in this particular book. But notice the subtitle, Princess of Orange here. It's the House of Orange. And I'll just tell you, he's anti-Catholic, he's anti-papist, he's pro-Protestant, he's pro-Protestant Reformation. He's pro-Luther, and he's pro-Church of England. I think he's an Englishman himself. I'm not really sure. And because he likes the House of Orange, and I have mixed feelings about it myself from the political perspective, he's also a big supporter of the Dutch monarchy. And those of you who've been watching shows related to this one, you know about the Erasmus Lab, and you've heard about Princess Beatrix and the royalty that are sitting on the throne now, who have been involved in some fashion in the pandemic. Right? I won't go into it that deeply, not because I don't want to get deplatformed. I don't have time right now. But the point is that historical connection runs through, not just through this book, but through all of our history. That includes American history, and it runs through the Code Napoleon, right? I mean, that's and by the way, Louisiana still is run on Code Napoleon, not through English common law. It's persisted, so it's kind of like a sub-government within a sub-state within a state. That's why this whole Robicheaux connection is, I think, really very, and the bloodline connection and historical connection is so important to what otherwise is being presented as another kinky Orange County Real Housewives, Bachelor #2 game show type reality program scenario. Right. And then that's how we're going to be led into following the story, ladies and gentlemen. And it's going to be put in a little true crime box, and it's going to be set over here. And we're not going to really be able to dig in to what this crime really represents. And we will not be able to understand the depth of this crime until perhaps it's too late. Right. Fortunately, through his great research and his forensics, mostly criminal forensics, the writer Steve Hodel, who was a former detective, as you know, was able to uncover a story that otherwise might have been lost to the ages. And it was through my intervention, through my cultural forensics, that was able to put Dr. George Hodel into an even larger light, where I place him at the center of a Frankist Sabbatean cult in Hollywood that had transnational presence in China and was part of this post-war occultic national security state biomedical mafia that we're seeing today in 2021. So I think the Robicheaux show story follows that general pattern, that general trajectory. I'm just kind of giving this to you as a prelude or as a preview, because the trial is not yet unfolded. And again, this might be news to you, but I figured this out early on through reading, primarily. Others that have figured this out long before I ever had. Right? We all have our influences, including myself, but I also contribute original material. That's really what the goal is. You take what you've learned and then you make your own contributions, just like you're going to make your contribution or are making contributions to your own area of research. Anyway, let me just leave off there because I'm running out of time. We only have 15 more minutes here. Let me talk a little bit about, I've already talked about the militarized OC. Let me talk about more specifically the Orange County milieu. Well, no. Let me finish up with the military. I haven't quite finished. I have so much material. I should mention, because we already talked about Earl Woods. We already talked about Tiger Woods as being a possible super soldier who was being trained at the Los Alamos base there. But there's another connection that deals with what Stephen Kinzer or these others who have written about it way after the fact, right? That we'll call mind control for the sake of convenience, right? We know about Fort Detrick not just as chemical warfare and biologicals, right, but also as mind control central, right? But in Orange County, in the heart of Orange County, there's a U.S. Marine Corps Air Base. It's called El Toro, right? The bull, right? It's taurine. And by the way, the House of Orange and all the symbology here, it's very taurine. It's very bullish. It goes back to the cult of Mithras, the bull. They have a sacrificial bull cult there. That's all part of the story, by the way. And as Peter Duke has found out and discovered and is photographed nicely, the Department of Agriculture, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, has all this Mithraic symbology and bas-reliefs on the building there, the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So it's very much ingrained in our popular culture. Again, another example, good example of the cultural forensics that's necessary to dig deep here. But El Toro U.S. Marine Base was where Lee Harvey Oswald, the alleged assassin of our beloved martyred President John F. Kennedy, he was stationed there after he came back from Atsugi, Japan, which most of you know is was and probably still is a spy station, but they also did mind control there apparently. And that's why he was said to have suffered one or more nervous breakdowns while he was in Japan. But after that, he came back. And according to what I read from people who knew him in Atsugi, his fellow soldiers, co-workers who were around him a lot, he underwent a radical personality transformation. He went from being kind of an effeminate, bullied type of person who shrinked from any type of conflict to someone who's very assertive and aggressive. So, maybe he went through some sort of program there. I don't know. But this type of information is useful. So he was there, and I think he was also there for what we would call mind control regimens there. By the way, Joseph Heller, the author of Catch-22, was also, not at the same time, but he was also at El Toro Marine Base when he was in the U.S. Marines, I think as an enlisted man. And as you've heard before, I suspect, like J.D. Salinger, I think Joseph Heller was another synthetic author that came out of OSS/CIA. He's one of those people that were brought forward to form the basis of post-war American arts and letters. Joseph Heller, J.D. Salinger, other people I've mentioned, Age of Anxiety, WH, on and on and on. All right, you've heard me talk about them. So Heller was there. Maybe he was undergoing training. We don't know, but we should check it out. And one final point about the militarization part of it, UC Irvine, which I think I was in grade school when a friend of mine's sister started going to Irvine. She was older than us, of course. And this is back in the probably 63, 60, right around the time where John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Maybe it was junior high. It was could have been like in the 66, something like that. But Irvine, UC Irvine itself, was put into place to move from what I call the kinetic warfare to the genetic warfare. And UC Irvine, from the very beginning, was heavily invested in bioscience. And to this very day, the whole industrial park area surrounding UC Irvine is, for the most part, bioscience related, right? All the big companies are represented there. These branch offices, they're not necessarily headquartered there, although companies like the Irvine Company are headquartered in either in Newport. I think they're headquartered in, by the way, Newport Beach is adjacent to Irvine. So when you talk about Irvine, and Newport Beach, and you're talking about Dr. Robicheaux and other people who were involved in these reality shows, right? It's all kind of the same conurbation, if you want to call it that is centered around UC Irvine. And it was the Irvine Company, which, by the way, goes back to 1860s, when it was a Mexican land grant holdings that they developed into what you see today as a planned community. And Irvine, by the way, is the first planned community in the United States of America, if not the world. So already you see in Irvine this prototype of what we're being moved into now in the post-human future. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to go to UC Irvine. They had a good doctoral program that I was interested in, comparative culture, which is what I do today, cultural forensics, right? And that was a good choice. But I didn't like the Irvine Company. I didn't like the Irvine milieu. And ironically, I wound up moving to Irvine and living there for a number of years before moving up north to Sacramento, which I don't know if is much better, but at least I got out of Creepyville, which is Irvine, California, and Newport Beach and Balboa. It's called Balboa Peninsula. We used to call it Balboa Island, but it's just kind of a jetty that's out there. And that's where Dr. Robicheaux had his $2 million luxury pad, where he and his girlfriend would go to the different clubs nearby, or maybe down to LA, Long Beach, maybe down to San Diego. They're all like within a, let's say, 100-mile radius, right? Him and Cerissa Riley would go to these clubs and meet attractive women in particular. I don't think there were any men at all. They were mostly women that I know of. I think they're all women. And they would be, I guess, seduced by the two, because it's not just one guy there, right, looking for women, it's like a pickup artist, right? His wingman happens to be a woman who's, by the account of some of the journalists, is attractive, right? I don't find her attractive at all. She scares the hell out of me by looking at her. If she came up to me in a bar, I'd say, oh my gosh, it's another honey trap being sent my way. And I'd be gone, right? But some people, they don't know about cultural forensics. They watched The Eligible Bachelor of Newport Beach. They've seen the reality show. I mean, you had the woman who was on the dating game, who picked Rodney James Alcala for a date on the dating game, hosted by, was it Chuck Woolery? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. She didn't go out with him. Once she met him in person, she was so creeped out. She had good instinct, right? Because back then there weren't as many women who were on psychotropic drugs, so they had their wits about them, and they weren't easily gulled or fooled or seduced by the weasels that abound, right? There weren't any that I know of date rape type drugs that apparently and allegedly, because he hasn't been tried yet, that Dr. Robicheaux and his girlfriend were using on his targeted victims at these clubs. And then it would go back to Balboa Island or Balboa Peninsula. By the way, Dick Dale of the Deltones, the surf music, he used to play there a lot. It was a good, back then when it was just a sleepy town before it became cool to be Newport Beach. It was just a funky beach town. So was Laguna Beach. It was just a funky place, and it was enjoyable. And I got part of that, and then it became another monster altogether. Before I conclude, Ben, let me just leave you with another insight, courtesy of my cultural forensics methodology, because we talked about game shows, TV game shows, cable shows. I alluded to them, and I promised you I would dig a little bit more deeper, and I'll get to it even more deeply in a future talk. But I wanted to put this out now because it'll help us understand the Robicheaux case as well. I alluded to the dating game. It was started in 1965, a couple of years after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I was a kid when this came on, and it was created, quote unquote, supposedly by a guy named Chuck Barris under Chuck Barris Productions. Oh, by the way, I should tell you that the Rodney James Alcala story, where he was picked as the eligible bachelor by this woman who didn't go out with him, that later was that character was later adapted to the Chucky movies, right? The one about the demon possessed doll, which I like. I think I've seen all of them. They're very, very clever. And I'm going to do a talk on the Chucky films as well. But the premise of Chucky, the doll, was that Rodney James Alcala was in a toy store. He was hit by lightning, and it went into his spirit. His evil spirit went into the Chucky doll. And you know what Chucky did for fun? He would kill women with butcher knives, right? So that was he's known as the dating game killer, right? And he has another military background, by the way, another nervous breakdown, very Lee Harvey Oswaldish, very Tiger Woody, suspect, Dr. Robicheaux, and maybe they'll subject him to a psychiatric analysis. I think they're going to try to squelch it, but they're going to try to contain it because I think he's part of some larger, not just a compromising type of operation where he's bringing these women in and political figures and corporate types, and then filming them having group sex with his girlfriend and all that. I mean, yeah, we know that goes on, but there's and I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying that I think there's something deeper and more nefarious than even that. Because, by the way, all that is not illegal. The fact that supposedly he likes group sex and orgies and they're swingers. At least not anymore. It might have been, but not. People really don't bat an eyelash at that. So, and that's probably where they're going to try to get him, so that the other deeper types of activities will not be touched upon. Anyway, the dating game, Chuck Barris Productions. As it turns out, the Chuck Barris autobiography is not me saying this; it's Chuck Barris himself, and he's dead, but he never recanted. He never changed his story here, but he claims that he himself, Chuck Barris, was a CIA assassin. And this is published it's still being published. The story keeps resurfacing over and over again. If you want to check it out, check the Hollywood Reporter of March 24th, 2017. The headline was Chuck Barris, a CIA assassin. And there's an autobiography by him called Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. And I read it quite a while ago because I'm interested in popular culture in general. Now I'm going to have to reread it in light of what I am understanding about the Robicheaux case and about the relationship of game shows for this ritualistic purpose, right? And I found some literature on it that video games and parlor games, because I'm into toys, I'm into Lego and Candyland and all these other mind control type. They have ritualistic roots for children. It's anthropologically, it's beyond doubt that games are not just funzo. They have deep occultic ritualistic purport. So why would not Chuck Barris be involved if he claims to be a CIA assassin in a game show called The Dating Game? And they had all kinds of your favorite and my favorite celebrities who've been through The Dating Game, including even Michael Jackson was on The Dating Game, I believe. And that was part of the transformation of that show. They kept on remaking it over and over again. And if you're thrown off by the title of the publisher, Hollywood Reporter, I will tell you, Hollywood Reporter does some of the best journalism out there in any genre. So just because it says Hollywood, not all the articles are good, but I rely quite a bit on accurate and incisive, up to a certain point, of course, reportage from the Hollywood Reporter. So if you think that's synonymous with the National Enquirer or the Sun or something like that, there's some similarities, but give it a shot. Take a look at it. All right. Now I'm out of time, but I think I was able to at least touch upon three major contributions courtesy of the cultural forensics methodology. One is this gamification of intrigue, right? Which I think, we haven't even gone there yet, but I think there's some satanic overtones, as you might have already probably inferred. You got there before I did, right? Or you know what I'm thinking. As well as the Bloodlines, the House of Orange, naranja español, that's orange, and that's comes from Persia originally, and the orange also represents the sun, so there's a whole solar deity connection. The symbology is very thick. There's number two, and then you got the insight that whole UC Irvine, Newport Beach, Balboa, Laguna Beach, Mission Viejo, Southern Orange County area comes from it's rooted in that culture. It's seeping through the soil here, and it's manifesting. It's provide the seedbed of people like Grant Robicheaux. And I haven't even had the chance to go through all the criminals who were medical doctors who have been through the UCI Medical Center, including one guy named Dr. Ricardo Ash, a Mexican national who had a position at the UC Davis Medical School and was involved in reproductive technologies. He was harvesting eggs from women and then transplanting them or implanting them in other women. And there was all kinds of lawsuits and all that, but that's really secondary to the point that he was involved in perfecting and implementing and really testing out this reproductive technology years ago. He got fired, right? They sent him away someplace, just like one of these priests that get caught, and they sent him to another parish. He found his way back down to Mexico. And guess what? Dr. Ricardo Ash was arrested by the Mexican government a couple of years ago, involved in some other type of scheme. So anyway, without having the opportunity to really go deeply into the University of California milieu, which, by the way, the original Planet of the Apes was filmed on the campus of UC Irvine because they had a certain type of architecture that the filmmakers of the producers of Planet of the Apes, which itself is a prescient film. I don't think they picked UC Irvine accidentally. I think the architecture, the occult architecture, the milieu, the soil itself, it is all of a piece here, and it all comes to bear into this deep cultural forensic study of Dr. Grant Robicheaux and his girlfriend Cerissa Riley. So if I were to write a true crime book about this, and I might, if not do an entire series on it, that's where I would be coming from, and this is the type of material that will get 500,000 views an audience and 750,000 audience, because no one else is doing it at this level. Everybody's doing it from a proceduralist, a criminalistic perspective. I'm coming at it from cultural forensics. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will help us to avert humanitarian disasters that are coming from our biomedical establishment. I'll leave it at that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for hanging in there today. Share this piece with everybody you know. I'm just getting warmed up here. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take it really far. I'll see you tomorrow at the office hours. I want to hear what you're working on so we can all rise together. All right. See you tomorrow. See you at the top. Bye-bye, ladies and gentlemen.